Joining us now to discuss, former Pentagon Chief of Staff, former NSC Counterterrorism Director, Kash Patel. Kash, great to see you, although it's a horrible day. The August 31st deadline, let's just start there. Should the president say that is off the table from now on after what happened?
Well, the president should say that America dictates our national security interests, not the Taliban. That's the first thing he should say, so the men and women in uniform know they have a commander-in-chief who's got a spine and a plan to protect their interests when they're fighting our fight on the ground. As to this August 31st date, this is just a date created, a fiction created by President Biden when he withdrew and rescinded President Trump's agreed-upon conditions-based withdrawal plan. And then he said, we'll use 9/11, the most terrific terrorist attack on American soil. We'll use that date to commemorate President Biden's withdrawal. Now what you have is the Taliban dictating to a president about withdrawal dates and telling us now in America how we are going to be handled. And they are using the August 31st date as a leverage point because they are in a position of strength right now. And unfortunately, our commander-in-chief is not.
Kash, the first time that this administration said that they are working with the Taliban to secure the release of Americans, the evacuation of Americans, I couldn't believe my ears. But after what happened today, is it clear that another thing the president needs to say, we are in charge of our security. We are not cooperating with the Taliban in that regard, because that is a deadly, deadly mistake.
Look, under President Trump, when I was running counterterrorism for him, I also ran the hostage portfolio, and it's something I'm intimately close with when I was running operations as a civilian in the military for the hostages. And that's a situation that we fear the most. And you hit it right on the head, David. Basically, what we have is a situation that might lead to hostages because President Biden has delegated the authority and the responsibility of retrieving American citizens to the Taliban, who we know has terrorists within its networks, and we know now has been led by individuals let out of Guantanamo Bay by President Obama. So this situation is dire, and we cannot rely on the Taliban. We cannot rely on the White House press secretary to tell the world that we are texting and calling and emailing American citizens, and hopefully they'll make it to Kabul. There needs to be a military plan in place with our special forces operators to go and locate and retrieve and collect our American citizens. It's what we do all over the world when they're in threat, and I don't know why we're not doing it here in Afghanistan.
From where would we mount that kind of counterattack? Because clearly we are under attack. We were under attack today, whether it was this ISIS group or whether, in fact, it might have had Taliban influencing it as well. The question is where we do it. Do we retake Bagram? We just had a general on, General Kellogg, who said that it's probably too late for that. How do we mount such a counterattack?
No, and I know General Kellogg, we work together in the administration, and there's a couple of ways to do it. First of all, you reestablish air superiority and our Predator program in the skies over Afghanistan, and you increase the amount of lines, as we call it, running over Afghanistan to shift focus, and not just retrieve and collect intelligence, but to drop munitions when necessary on targets such as ISIS-K and Al-Qaeda and Taliban that are hurting American interests. That's a piece of it. A second piece of it, and maybe I disagree with the General just a touch, is that we have to establish a forward operating base somewhere. And I don't know the ground level intelligence for Bagram, but that would be my #1 option to at least temporarily establish a foothold. And if we can't do that, then we have certain locations in and around the theater of Afghanistan where we can launch these types of operations. But you need support on, as we say, from sea, land, and air. And I'm not seeing support from any of those three to run this side of operation.
Kash, it's a difficult question. I sort of danced around it a little with General Kellogg, but I'll go straight forward with you on it. Does this president have the confidence and the full support of the Pentagon?
I can't speak for the Pentagon, but I can speak for the many members of the DoD that I serve with. And no, we don't. The folks that I've retired with, the folks that are still in, they have no confidence in their commander-in-chief. And I can't imagine that that opinion resonates differently in the halls of the Department of Defense and the 3 million men and women serving our country right now. And maybe at 5 o'clock, at 1700 hours today, he'll come on and act like a commander-in-chief that we need, that America needs, and put the mission first. And I hope he does. But right now, the mission is last and politics is first.
Well, and there's still possibly thousands of Americans on the ground. In the first place, why would you shut down Bagram and begin removing troops when you still didn't have a clear idea of how many Americans were on the ground in Afghanistan. That's the #1 responsibility of the United States government, is to protect Americans, to protect them wherever they are. If there's a single American that's being held hostage somewhere in Iran, we would do anything to get them out. We have thousands of Americans in Afghanistan right now in harm's way. How can we turn that around, what was done to put them in harm's way?
Well, it's like you said earlier, you have to reestablish your presence in the environment, at least temporarily, to regain a security posture and a perimeter where you can operate and send our operators into regions in Afghanistan to reclaim our citizens safely. But you don't have that. You asked how this could occur, how we possibly could. And it's because they have politicized the national security apparatus of the United States. It's what they accused us of doing under President Trump so they could have their headlines. But we ran the mission successfully. We retrieved more hostages in American history under President Trump than ever before, and we were prepared to go anywhere when any American was in harm's way. That was a simple priority President Trump placed on American lives.
Cash,
and that's what a commander-in-chief needs to be doing all day long.
We've run out of time again, but I just have to ask a final question about terrorism writ large. That was one of your specialties, was tracking terrorism around the globe. Thankfully, we hadn't even had to worry about it much over the past couple of years, but now we do. When do you think, and how could the events in Afghanistan spill over to the rest of the world?
Soon. These people have been lying in wait. These people, being ISIS-K and Al-Qaeda and other offshoots, have been lying in wait in Afghanistan and other places. And when they seize an opportunity like this one, which is a total catastrophe for American interests, they can resurge with great efficacy and little resources. And and we're seeing it now.
Well, let's hope we hear the right thing coming from the president in about a half hour from now. Kash Patel, good to see you. Thank you very much.